So we switched the order of the meeting tonight to have the committee of the whole first and then the village board meeting following. Because we had a very lengthy closed session at the end of the village board meeting, and I didn't want all of you all to have to sit here and wait for the next meeting to start. So bear with us, we'll get there. Yeah, we will. Pleasantly. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Here.
Yes.
Martin?
Here.
Here.
Here. Approval of the minutes from committee of the whole, October 14th. Motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of October 14th, 2025.
Nancy, have a second.
Second.
Jeff Brand?
Yeah. Yep.
Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's our approval. Public comment, provide 2-minute opportunity for citizens to voice their opinions on committee of the whole. Committee of the whole cannot respond to may not put meeting requirements. Anybody like to address this? President Black? Thoughts? All the
Topic one, last night, the open comment from the planning commission was released in the agenda. I urge you to add that back after the contentious discussion that we had around the data center. So obviously, we have very limited number of opportunities to address, for the planning commission, or the wrong message to send to reduce them. So I urge you to add that back. On the topic, on this discussion for the board meeting today, with regard to page 6, it appears that the developer incentives have risen from 29.7 million to 32.9 million for 254 homes, which takes the developer incentive to a $129,000 per home subsidy. This is a really tough message to send to taxpayers who typically pay their taxes every year, that California is so unattractive to development that we have to pay that much for somebody to build a house here. Well, thank you.
Well, good evening.
Paul Pinter, 7348 Buying Road. I would just like to follow up with Prescott's comments and concur with that. Last night I was here and ready to address the board with comments. And regarding the agenda items for this evening, I agree, and I feel that this may be another TID that is not well reviewed and maybe rushed through again. So I have some concerns. I just wanted to reinforce that. Thank you.
What else? Okay. Committee updates. Nancy Pierce, planning commission, please.
Planning commission met last night. We know the things that were passed, particularly we looked at the survey, we other pieces. I don't know anything coming down the pipe at the moment. He sent me a message, and I know I was
I'll leave
right.
it.
He was going to answer.
I'm sorry.
Nope.
Yeah, it's on now.
1, 2, 3. Yep. There are 6 agenda items on the planning commission. One was the final plat for Thomas Tree Farm. Other was a waiver request from the conservation easement requirement for Homestead Acres subdivision, as well as the appointment of Valerie Mansell to the comprehensive plan committee. And then the other items were the comprehensive plan survey was approved. The plan commission went through a SWOT analysis and word cloud exercise as well. They don't now 6 months of escaping my brain. I think you got the last.
I think so. I think we're on.
But those are the action items that were conducted last night, meeting. And then at the next village board, we'll have a more formulated, agenda for the November plan.
Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, Holly?
Well, we haven't had a meeting, but, Ryan sent me some pretty great shots of drone footage over the new, pickleball courts that are pretty much ready to go, right? For me, there you go. Sorry, but, Ryan, anything else other than that?
No, let's do it, Ross, talk about that.
No. Thanks, Ryan, for your work.
So what's your calendar on the utility?
We actually meet next week, so I don't have anything to report tonight. Nothing exciting.
Nothing to say. Thank you, sir. Was it received, Tommy, Fran?
Our last meeting was canceled, so it should have been last Thursday, but I have forwarded a bunch of photos, which they have requested, they really have requested.
Thank you, Fran. I don't have any report from the committees. Moving on to new business, 6A, overview of upcoming comprehensive plan update. Brian Walter, Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. Brian.
Evening.
How you doing tonight?
Good. How are you? All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here again. I've had a chance to work with many of you over the last couple of years on a few projects. There we go.
There it is.
All right. So as you mentioned, my name is Brian Walter. I'm senior planner with the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. I'm here tonight just as we're starting a comprehensive plan process, just to kind of introduce myself, the commission, the work that we do in our role in this process, and what we see that process as well as answering questions that you all might have. So about the commission, for those of you who are not familiar with our work, we are the area-wide regional advisory planning agency for the 7-county southeastern Wisconsin region. On a regional level, we perform 3 basic functions. We provide planning and data and analyses for the communities in the region. We develop a framework of long-range area-wide plans, and we coordinate consistent planning throughout the region. And the other major thing that we do, which is the reason why I'm here, is we do assist communities as well in developing and updating local plans. So the village staff reached out to us for support in developing the comprehensive plan update that we are taking. So as far as comprehensive planning, why do we do comprehensive planning? It has a number of purposes to help guide the growth and development of a community. One of its primary purposes is to address current and future needs, including current population, household, and employment, as well as projecting what that might look like in the future, as that will determine future demand. The purpose of this is really to help communities proactively prepare for their future needs and provide a framework to help guide and growth and shape the future development aligned with the community's goals, objectives, and long-term vision. It also serves as a reference for all of you folks on the village board when you're making decisions. And the most important reason, of course, is it is required by Wisconsin law that communities have an adopted comprehensive plan updated every 10 years. Village's current comprehensive plan is part of the Racine County Multi-Jurisdictional Comprehensive Plan, which was adopted in 2008. So we're working on the update. So when we start on this plan, we have a few goals and vision in mind for what we want to do. First of all, we want to make this accessible to a wider audience. The prior plan is quite lengthy, given that it covers all of Racine County. This is really to be specific to the village of Caledonia and easier to access. We will review and assess the recommendations from prior plans, and it's really important to village staff and to the commission that this is informed by meaningful community input. This is a plan for the community, and it needs to reflect what the community wants. It is to promote sound planning practices and efficient development, and it is a living document that provides a vision for the future to 2050 that can be updated, amended, etc. by the village board as it sees fit. So just a quick overview of what we anticipate the development process to be. There's a few kind of stages. A lot of these are going on currently right now. The first 3 in particular, first 4 really, collecting demographic, household, and employment data. That's my job to be doing right now on that, as well as inventorying the village's housing, infrastructure, and community facilities. assessing the community strengths and weaknesses. I believe you're all going to be participating in some exercises with village staff on that tonight, so that'll be coming up here shortly, but that has been ongoing already. As has public input and engagement, being led by village staff. And it's really something that we envision as a collaborative development effort. Staff is involved, citizens from the village are involved, obviously, commission staff are involved in supporting that. It's anticipated this will be about an 18 to 24 month process overall before we have a plan. Just a quick overview of their anticipated workflow. I won't walk you all through this, you got it there, but there are kind of 4 stages there. There's background work happening now, public input, which really goes on throughout the entire course of the plan process. Development of the plan, specifically goals, objectives, and recommendations, and then obviously we'll be a draft that'll go through public open house and submission by the village board for adoption. With that, before I hand it over to the village staff for their exercises, any questions from the trustees tonight?
I want you to repeat one thing.
Yes.
People have criticized me about doing this kind of plan. It is required by state law.
Yes.
It's required to renew it.
Yes.
How often?
Every 10 years.
And how long is it been for us?
Currently it has been 17 years.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if you think that I'm criticizing you for doing this, I'm not. It's
I-
the way in which it's done,
I-
just so you know it's not me.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm curious about the survey, because as I look at the survey, it looks to me as though those questions are designed to elicit some particular answers. It does not look to me as useful questions, and I'm wondering who created that survey? Where did that come from?
So the survey was primarily developed by village staff with input and review from the commission. There are 9 required elements under state law, and so questions that are on the survey are designed to find specific information related to each of those elements that would be used as a basis for considering plan recommendations and things so forth for the public to consider.
Well, I guess one of my issues is that there's a great many questions on housing. It looks to me as though it's mainly designed to promote additional housing. And in particular, it looks to me as though it's intended to promote lower cost housing. And that if it is, we ought to be told that. Because there's very many questions about can you afford this, is your house affordable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are no questions at all regarding country estate housing, which is in fact what people are purchasing. People are voting with their purses and purchasing those. There's no question, so that no one can say that's what they would prefer. So there are glaring omissions in that survey, and that the survey appears to me to be designed to force certain answers that I think may not be the will of the village as a whole. So I'm concerned about that.
I am not, so I can't speak to all of this. I'm not familiar with what was done and what was approved through the planning commission last night. I was involved in that stage. I can say that from our end-to-end development standpoint of reviewing the initial surveys, there was no intention to guide any particular answers. Part of why housing is considered a particularly important topic under the state comprehensive planning law, and specifically around affordable housing, is things that we are required to address in a comprehensive plan. So there are questions to try to determine whether or not that is something, whether there are issues with that currently. So to provide basis for decision making and recommendations, there isn't necessarily, and there's not any foregone conclusion of what those recommendations would be at this point.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that there's no way for people to answer their preferences because there are omissions and those things that they might prefer. So to me, that survey really cannot be accurate because it doesn't ask the questions that people have indicated by moving, as I say, with their wallets that they prefer.
Yeah,
That's simply not present. And this isn't the first time I've mentioned this. I have mentioned it to our development director. This isn't off the top of my head, but I've been looking at it. I was at the meeting when the Special Planning Commission went over these questions, and they had a lot of good questions. In particular, that a lot of these questions were leading. I can tell you, if a retired lawyer, they would never make it in court. They would say, objection leading, objection that assumes the fact it's not in evidence. So, but that committee never saw the revised survey. So as far as I can tell, that committee doesn't know whether their recommendations were taken into account in what now was the survey that was adopted by the planning commission. That seems to me a very odd process. To have a committee that's supposedly there to provide input into the survey, but then never see whether their input was received or not. So I guess I do have a critique of that, and that seems to feed into my same belief that this seems to be aimed at a particular result. Maybe it's not, but that's what it looks like to me.
And,
Yes.
so one, I'm sorry you feel that people think that we're just trying to cram this down somebody's throat. This is a legal requirement, there's no question on it. I did have the opportunity last week to go to a planning commission training session, put on by UW Stevens Point, I guess it was, whatever, very well. And land use plan was specifically a heavy topic at the very beginning on it. They did a nice job. One of the things that I thought was interesting is that we are not restricted to those 9 elements that are listed in the law. That as a community, we can choose to add things. Now, not that they're applicable here at all, but they suggested things like you could add sustainability, you can add public health. So as a community, and there's other specific areas we want to look at, we can add that into it. So I think just understanding the breadth of it. You weren't here last night, sit on planning. I had some strong comments about the survey because I did an item by item comparison from the original one, the second one, and this final one. There were some things added into the survey that were not part of the discussion of the subcommission at their last meeting. Now, I know the subcommission did not get to see the survey that we're looking at now, but they did approve it to go forward without reviewing it. So what we saw last night was that document. So I don't think we just say that it would have been nice for them to review it. I agree, but that isn't the process they went through on that particular one. You and I, we've talked, and I've been very vocal that I have not been impressed with some of this. I hope it gets better. But I do think, again, we do have questions in there that do not reflect. So I'd like to see that broadened. We have time to correct that or make other changes.
So if I can, I just would say I can't speak to everything in the survey because, as I said, my involvement with that is not extensive necessarily. I will say that in my discussions with the planning and development staff, we're not necessarily limited to doing a single survey either. There was some discussion of how long of a survey is appropriate to put out at once as well, and do we want to focus in different areas? So, all of these things are great feedback here, and there is an opportunity to do more feedback around specific areas. Yes, you are correct. We are not limited to those 9 elements, and as we go through the process, if there's other things that we think are appropriate, that's absolutely something we can look at. Thank you. Okay.
They approved coming forward. The discussion changed the staff.
Okay, eventually this comes to the board for approval, right?
No, it doesn't. They approved it last night.
No, the
Well,
planning.
It doesn't. I asked if it came to the board. Ask Mr. Wagner.
Well, I asked that question of Pete at the last meeting, and he said it would come to the board for review.
I did not say that. You can go to the recording. I did not answer that question.
That's part of the issue that I have. That
I did ask that question.
I heard you.
If there are no other questions for me, I will turn it to
We'll talk about this.
Yeah.
Okay, 6B, comprehensive plan stakeholder exercise. The subcommittee level members will participate in the board following exercise instruction and discussion rules of strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, or SWOT, serving as a key step in assessing point conditions and identifying community priorities. Brandon, if you want to.
Well, my comment was that if this is going to be a really long meeting, I thought maybe we could adjourn this particular item.
Move this item.
In the next,
Would you like to make a motion to move this item? The next meeting?
I do make that motion because we have a long closed meeting.
We already have a second on.
I'll second.
Sorry, discussion on that. We'll waive over one.
The subcommittee's not meeting again.
That is correct.
So we have time.
So all in favor of laying this over, next, committee of the whole, say aye. Those opposed, say nay. Okay, table, take a beat. Resolution 2025, XXX, approving the court, authorizing the bills paid on the agreement with paramedic billing services. Chief, did you have anyone to add to this?
No, other than that, we've added, several companies and EDS was one that rolls to the top. We want better customer service.
Thank you, chief, longest contract we've ever had. Have a motion to approve?
Are we making it to the board?
Yeah,
Make a motion to resist the board.
I'll second.
a motion to move to approve and move to the board. Have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ordinance 2025, X, to amend Title 7, Tax Security, and Section 2, related to tax exempt reports and fees. I have a motion to approve this, please.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance, to move to the board, ordinance 2025 X to amend Title 7, Chapter 15, Section 2, relating to tax and reports.
Have a second.
Second.
Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Ordinance 2025 X again, create Title 5, Chapter 3, Section 3, regulations of sale, application, use of coal tar and high PKA sealant products. Then a motion to approve this.
Make a motion to approve and move to the board.
In your motion, could you include, subject to review, by the village attorney?
I make a motion to approve within the village board, subject to review of the village attorney. And thank you for your work on this, guys.
Double second? Before we vote, I have one question. This pertains to the private driveways too? Residential?
Yeah, this was residential parking lots, commercial.
Well, in my house. Does it apply to my house? How do I know as a consumer what kind of black tar?
Material safety data sheets, and usually there's information. So I think at the last meeting I presented that I looked up an asphalt sealant product at Farm Fleet, and depending on where you're purchasing the material, it may already be banned from sale. So some of this ordinance comes from a lot of Milwaukee County neighborhoods, as well as the Racine ordinance that was passed. So depending on exactly where you buy it, it's already been banned from sale. Otherwise, yeah, there's information listed in either the descriptions on the material itself, or look it up online for the manufacturer, the production, what they're selling it, and they usually have a material data sheet that includes it.
Product anyway.
Yeah, and the reason for this, as I understand it, is that they're sort of urban bans of people that their trucks that will come up to a house and say, we have a third of whatever it is left.
That's what got me.
Rams.
But no, what this is actually, the bottom line is it's really not good for the environment either, and it's a very poor quality product.
I thought it was because of.
Well, no, that's how it started, and that's how, it's one opportunity we have to enforce the fraud that is happening when it comes to targeting of our citizens. And the ability to criminally charge them, or at least arrest them and issue them citations for putting such a poor product down on our driveway.
Okay, but is this something that you could buy, let's say, at Best Buy, I don't know, wherever, Home Depot or something, and would you know?
I mean, this would be something specifically in like driveway sealant material, like a Farm Fleet, but this is also a material that would be a stormwater issue runoff that runs into our rivers or lakes and streams. That's a big reason why a lot of these communities established this up front. This was years ago, but it's considered a carcinogen and a health hazard, not only to humans, but also to the environment. So that's why I would say, if you want to look at it that way, first and foremost, it's a pollutant to our natural environment that also is being utilized by the very things that Holly.
Okay, I don't have any objection at all to banning it. I'm just wondering if people will know that they're violating an ordinance if they go by it. But Tom said, I know,
Well, I don't think that
there are penalties for somebody
this
who goes
isn't
to
aimed
Farm
at,
Fleet and buys a fan? Like, is there a penalty for someone who goes to Farm and Fleet and, buys a gallon of stuff or what?
Unfortunately, as I presented in the last one, this isn't a very enforceable situation from, we'll call it from the public works standpoint. We don't issue permits for sealing a driveway, commercial properties for sealing your parking lot, until there's an actual physical reconstruction or things of that, or when some activities we get involved, specifically on private property. When it gets to the public, we, as a municipality, don't recommend or approve material to begin with. So that's why it's being presented at this stage, because this is an ordinance that is, like I said, it is almost 90% of Milwaukee County and other areas around the community, specifically Racine, that have presented and brought this forward to all of those presented so far. And those have fan sales, but I can't guarantee you that someone might be selling it or could have it purchased in Illinois and brought it over here to utilize it. So that's where some of these concerns cross over and have.
But we banned the sale of it.
Fran, it's not a ban on the sale, it's the ban on the application, or installation.
I'm wondering if would we want to ban the sale? I think what Ryan just said was that some cities ban the sale.
There is language in this specific ordinance that, like as I mentioned, is very much a replica of neighboring that says any person who sells pavement sealant products within the village shall prominently display in the area where such pavement sealant products are sold a notice that contains the following language. The application of false sealant products, I can sound like an advertisement here really, really fast, regarding all the things we've just described. So that is a aspect of this ordinance, and that's why, again, I recommend the village attorney thoroughly review and, add to her workload that she has already lots of.
Okay, I mean, I guess my preference would be if we don't want to use it in the village, that we would prefer to ban the sale of it in the village.
That would be fine to do it.
Where you can buy it. We don't have a store.
So Ryan, back to my original, I've had my driveway sealed twice and never asked them to drill it down, it's black paint. But my struggle with this is that we have a penalty clause for using it, fine. And I think most homeowners would never know what on their driveway.
I agree. I think that this is a draft ordinance that has been presented to you at the direction of the committee of the whole originally.
Okay.
So this is more or less an exact replica of what we're seeing Oak Creek, Franklin, St. Francis, other municipalities that is being brought to you guys at the recommendation of the board last week. So at your direction and recommendation by the attorney, I think have further discussion.
Yeah, I haven't reviewed this for content yet. I wanted to see if the committee still wanted to go forward with it. If you do, we'll certainly take a look at it. And I missed that there was a sale component earlier. There's penalties basically for the application of it, not the sale of it. So we want to marry those. So we could review this from a policy perspective. The question though is this still something you want to regulate? And then we'll get it in good form to bring it forward. But I do think there's going to need to be a public relations piece to it to inform and educate about the harms that this product causes and why you're regulating it. We do have prosecutorial discretion. So if there is an issue where you have a homeowner who has had this.
All right, that was my.
Okay.
Turning it down at your job.
Don't want to hear from the lawyer anymore. But that's had this applied, but maybe didn't realize it, didn't know because that was the contractor that did it. I mean, there's some prosecutorial discretion to address, I think, those situations, but it is gonna need to be a public relations piece in addition to an enforcement piece.
I was thinking that perhaps we could ban a commercial application. And then that would be innocent homeowners off the hook, but.
Well, you could, that would be a policy decision. Right now, it has any person who violates, by buying it, would be in violation if it was their residence. And then you also have a provision that deals with, it indicates the commercial sealant product applicator or commercial developer, that gets to the commercial application. If you want to have, from a policy perspective, have that be the penalty, you can certainly do that.
Do we have a motion? No. Would you like to make a motion?
No, that's right. Ryan, that's another question. Please, Ryan, do the stores that potentially could sell this product?
Dale, can you use your microphone?
Yes, I
please? Thank you.
Will you? Well, yes, I'll use it also.
Could he, yes, will.
Okay, the stores that potentially could sell this in our area, do they have signs up saying that they don't have that product to sell?
I am not 100% certain. I don't frequent every single store around here to
No, I
verify
understand
that, but I have not seen them, but I have seen it on the information of the material itself and their associated safety data sheet that says this is not a coal tar substance or something along those lines.
Because I know we have no place in Caledonia you can technically buy. It's not a store, a hardware store, lumber yard, anything like that. But that's in Mercedes.
Oh, it's in, yeah, they get it.
I was just questioning if they're not supposed to sell it technically, but could they sell it? Probably could.
I don't think somebody in the audience.
I think that
has an answer.
The products that you're referring to in the state of Wisconsin banned them from being sold in the entire state. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't order them from somewhere else. But as far as through, right here locally in our area, it's been banned in the state of Wisconsin.
That's what
Thank you.
Right, that's also what comes up on the immediate Google search, but as I presented, the two assembly bills that were presented at the state, it is not a state statute. So.
How long did you have?
Microphone.
So, I'm not looking to punish our homeowners, that's not the point of this. And I think if a homeowner uses it, it's probably because either they wanted to save a buck and got it from a different state or ordered it online. But I think the majority of our homeowners are responsible when it comes to buying their products and doing it, majority. This is for contractor and the person trying to make a quick buck. This is to hold them liable for not only what they're doing to our citizens by applying correct product, but also to our environment. And so that's all I'm trying to do here is hold them accountable, hold people accountable that are purposely putting this product into our environment. Not so much the happenstance where somebody buys it and puts it on. I don't think that's going to happen very often. What we see are contractors, both local and from out of this area, scamming our homeowners and our businesses with this product. And that is the penalty I want. That is what I want to be enforceable. And it helps the environment at the same time. So that's my.
So at the moment, we have a motion to approve the second deal.
With review of lane.
Review by lane. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, review by name. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Remove that asphalt. Review.
Very well, this, we got. Discussion on electronic communications records retention. Elaine? Elaine, you have the floor.
Electronic records retention.
Sorry, I was making some notes, so I didn't forget what your direction was on the other item. I talked with Jen and I looked at the memo that she put into the packet, and there were some questions related to how long do different, members of our bodies need to be hanging on to their electronic communication. So, Jen provided, some background information as part of her memo, and if you look at that, as a threshold, I just want to mention, our public records laws, much like our open meetings laws, have not kept up with how we use technology today, right? So you're trying to use those laws and interpreting them to the kinds of ways you communicate today. And sometimes that's very difficult because we use so many platforms to communicate. So when you're looking at your electronic communication records, you think of your email first, and you do have village issued emails, and you should be using those to communicate with village staff, to communicate with, for any village business, in an effort to have your retention of those emails made easier for you, accessible to public records requests and disclosure when that's required. Somebody makes a request for that. So we recommend that. Sometimes we recognize that officials get emails at personal email addresses from constituents or other persons because that's the email that they have for you. So they use it because it's easy. We discourage that, and we encourage you to tell individuals to communicate with you through your proper or official village email address. But that doesn't always happen. But in terms of retention, so long as you're a member of the body and for 6 months past your term, based on the information that Jen provided, you should be retaining those communications that relate to village business. If you receive emails an easy way to do that, if you happen to receive an email on a personal email address, forward it to your village email address, and that'll be retained for you as a part of the village record keeping process. So we encourage you to do that and try to use, as best practice, that email address so that you don't run into a situation where you have commingling with your private email address or your work email address or whatever it may be. So that one is an easier one to handle. The more difficult electronic communications you may receive are through other platforms: Facebook, Messenger, Instagram Messenger, Twitter Messenger. There's probably others that I'm not thinking of. But those are also electronic communications that you receive, and you should be retaining those as well as part of your record retention for the records of your office, which is your trustee. So those are also required to be retained. What also should be retained are, if you have a Facebook page that you use as a trustee, you should be archiving that information and retaining that information, because if you use it as a platform to communicate information to your constituents, as well as receive information by allowing people to post on it, that's also an electronic communication that you've received in the position of your office and should be retaining. So people use many methods to communicate, but all of those would be records of your office, electronic communications that you should be retaining in accordance with what Jen provided to you. It's difficult, right? You want to be accessible to your elected, the taxpayers and other people in the community, but you want to make sure that you're adequately managing those records in accordance with what the requirements are. Because if you don't, you can get in trouble. And if you have a disclosure requirement, because there's been a public records request, and you don't provide it, and somebody can prove that you didn't follow the law provided, you can get in trouble, you can get fined. So I do think it's important that you do those things and you manage those appropriately. Text messages are also a mode of communicating that can be subject to a records request. So you need to manage those accordingly and archive them as well. I know that you don't have village issued phones, and people communicate via text messaging. Sometimes, in fact, when these laws were put into place, people picked up the phone and they called, or they mailed you a letter, and that's how you received that communication, or they dropped it off and gave it to you. So it is more difficult, but all of those different platforms, you need to be managing those records and maintaining.
I have a question, like, we get, I do, and I'm sure everybody else does, on our village email, what I consider junk, you know. So do we have to save all that too?
No, I
I've
mean, if
deleted
it's not specifically related to village business, like you get an Office Depot email for some reason at that email address, that's not necessarily village business. If you place an order on behalf of the village to Office Depot, then that's a record of the village. So there are some exceptions. So, for example, if you have a purely personal email that you sent to your sister using your village email address and you should have used it in the other, and you didn't talk about village business, and it was just, hey, you had that procedure, how's it going? That can be withheld from a public records request. I mean, it's retained on the village servers, and the village is archiving those emails on a regular basis. But a purely personal email on a work computer isn't necessarily subject to public disclosure. But if you have an email to your sister, to use an example again, where you ask about how she's doing, but then that person also says, you know, I really hate this ordinance. I really think you should modify it this way. Well, the first part might be redacted because it's purely personal, but the second part is village business, so that would be subject to disclosure, even though it's just your sister.
That's, well, I don't like this laptop, so that's not an issue for me. But, for example, I get, and I think everybody gets, what I perceive as a sort of a right-wing newsletter kind of a thing. Do I have to keep that? It's just I mean, I think of it as clutter, honestly, when I'm.
Well, I think in what context is it coming to you? Is it a communication about some laws that might affect village business? Perhaps it might be.
So I mean.
I don't, yeah, you have to look at it. I don't know.
So it's easier to just leave it.
It probably is, unfortunately. It takes up space on the village servers and it costs the village more money. So it's important, you know, that when you're managing your village issued email account, that you manage that accordingly so that you don't subscribe to things that you don't need access to, so that you could try to minimize the receipt of those kinds of messages.
I mean, they just come gratuitous. There's a lot of things that come to us from other states, for example, saying, I don't know, buy our park bench or whatever. You know, I mean, to me, that's just clutter on my email, but if you think we should save it all, I'll just leave it there, I guess, and then
yeah,
I can accumulate.
It would be good to, if you're looking to do kind of a group delete of just junk messages, that you just ask the question, Jen can take a peek at it, or other people in the clerk's office to say that that's just junk. You can get rid of that. I get that there's space constraints, and there are things that you're going to receive that don't really relate to village business at all. I'm not concerned about those records, but you need to use judgment, and it's best to ask the question before inadvertently doing something. But to be honest, I suppose even if you've deleted some things, I'm guessing through the village archival system, some of that is still going to be on the village's servers and then searchable if we get a public records request.
Well, that's what I want to clarify, because anything that comes into our village email, I was under the impression that was backed up on a village server, and we don't necessarily need to save it in our email account, do we? Once it's backed up, when does it get backed up? Is it nightly, weekly, how often?
The email is backed up when it's received by Microsoft.
Okay, then, so technically, we could just delete it right out of our email box the next day, correct? Or at least, we don't really need to save it in our emails, it's backed up, is that correct, Elaine? Or?
That's the way it is supposed to work, yes. I can't guarantee you that Microsoft backs up everything.
It's hard to find things sometimes because there's so much clutter on the email that's coming from
wherever.
Right, and one of, I don't wanna tell you exactly how to manage your personal email box, because you should manage it. Whether that you, well, that's what I mean the village email, because obviously you could receive a lot of village emails as well for village business, and, how you manage those records so that you can access the information that you should go back to and look at is important, and, whether that's doing that by folders within the email account, that's something that you should decide how you want to manage it. I don't want to tell you that it's okay for you to just go ahead and delete all the emails in your inbox, assuming that the program's working correctly to back those up, because you may need access to those the next week. I just don't want you to be in that situation.
I say what I think I need to say for reference. I've got emails going back 15 years. So.
I know you've been on the board a long time.
Yeah, but there's a bunch of them that, if I'm reading this correctly, what the bullet point says here, looks like a standard email. It's not a petition, it's not anything out of the ordinary. I only need to save 3 years unless I personally want to save it longer than that. That's the way I'm reading it.
Which point are you reading?
Open records requests and responses. Records relating to regular and reformatted, repetitious, systematic, or continuing requests.
Well, that's really geared towards open records requests that specifically come into the village, and that the village is required, then responds to, and what those records are. So that's the event plus 3 years. So really, the clerk's office is managing those public records requests. So she will be the one who handles the record retention on those open records requests. But correspondence is event plus 6 months, event equals separation from position, and the term, you're still in your position. So I read that to say you should be retaining those until you 6 months from the end of your term.
Okay.
Decide you don't want to do this.
All right. Well, the main reason I put this, I wanted it on the agenda tonight. I never get emails on my personal account until recently. I got a couple, and I asked Jennifer today, couldn't we just forward that email to our? If you answer that, so then in my personal account, I can delete it once I've done that, right?
Correct.
In my
As long as you're preserving it in some format, by forwarding it that way, it holds all the metadata with it.
All right. I go dark other than email and phone call. I'm a caveman. I don't do anything on social network. I don't want to do it. I couldn't care less about it. So if anybody out there needs to contact me, do it the old-fashioned way, call me, write me, or an email. I don't go to Facebook ever. However, what about other members of committees that are not on the board, but they're on committees, and they're on Facebook and they're on email? Do they need to save all that sort of thing?
They don't even have a.
Yes. Well, we've talked about that, and I think Todd is going to work to implement, getting all of your appointed officials village issued email addresses. That is a best practice. So what we've recommended, we've also recommended, that we hold another training session. We did one about, so Pete and Tony and Ryan, I think we did one about 5 years ago or 6 years ago, where we went over public records, open meetings, procedural rules, invited all of the officials and staff, held it in this room, and reviewed all of the rules. So it's probably a good time to do that again, because we've had turnover, and there are risks associated with that. And if you don't, comply with open meetings laws and the record retention, public records laws, you can get in trouble for it. You can get fined for that. So we want to make sure everybody's following the rules. So we recommended that as well.
It's a lot of fun to go through my 40,000 text messages, because it goes back to the issuance of my phone.
That's why I prefaced this by the public records laws not kept up with how we use means of communication today.
Thank you, Elaine.
You're welcome.
You killed it.
Oh, I didn't,
No,
killed it. Okay. Suggestions for items on the next future committee vote?
I'm just wondering, I don't have so much a suggestion as wondering what happened to a couple of my suggestions. One was to look into the dark skies ordinance that Mount Pleasant has. I suggested that a number of meetings ago and it seems to have disappeared.
Sorry, Graham, what was it? What was the subject?
Dark skies ordinance.
Oh, dark sky.
Yeah. And Mount Pleasant has such an ordinance. And when a citizen brought that to me.
Right, so we'll look into that.
I've got, possible, one I'd like to have is an open discussion on our town meeting, what is the intent on committee reports, general discussions, just going back from when we first started, so we have clarity. I do have a question that I'd like us to discuss on public comments, so we understand all the parts around that. And I don't know that this actually belongs on there, but this is back to our Freedom of Information Act request with the ones we have sitting in front of us. Have we already, and my question is, have we provided the requesters with cost factors? But I don't know if that's an item for this or not.
That would be more informational, we can talk about that.
Okay, that's right. No problem.
I guess in light of some of the comments that were made today, perhaps we should have a policy about when and if public comment for the planning commission is removed. I don't think that was a trustee, I don't think that was a board decision. I don't know how it happened.
Well, I asked about public comment availability for the next meeting, on the now. First, have a general discussion about that.
Including for,
Oh, my third one is gonna be information only, it wouldn't be something else. That's it. So, skip it.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we will adjourn the committee of the whole, we move on into